And hello everyone, Dwayne here. Welcome to the Radical of Math. And on our chalkboard today, we have problem 2 of the AP Precalculus free response questions of 2025. I'm going to put the PDF down in the video description here. That way you can follow along with this. But basically the premise is that a musician has released a new song. We are given this chart. The top row is months. The bottom is number of plays in thousands. And it can be modeled with this function. And then we are asked 6 questions about this function. And so it can be broke down this way. A is system of equations. System of equations. And then solving. Question B is a little bit more nuanced. Question B is rate of change and then there's some interpretation. Then you interpret something. And then C is a question about domain of D of T. So apologies if B is a little bit muddy. I'm working a small little piece of chalk before I get back into the main piece. But nevertheless, here's what it's asking for. So once again, as mentioned in the previous video in free response question 1, the order is wrong. The order for this should be C, A, B. That should be the order that you answer these questions in. Because domain should be 1 point. So this should be 1 point. I'm going to put that, let me put that over here on the left today. 1 point. B is very nuanced. It's a 3-parter. And I'm going to give that 5 points. And then A is the remaining 3 points, using a 9-point scale. So let's start by answering C. So C basically says the quadratic function D has absolutely one absolute minimum or absolute maximum. This can be used to determine a domain restriction. Explain how a min-max can be used to determine a boundary for the domain of D. Okay. This is an Algebra 2 question. This is an intuition question. And what you should instantly recognize is this quadratic is a parabola that opens upward with a restriction, and that is T cannot be less than 0. So very important to say that. So T greater than 0. It's a parabola. So I'm going to take this bit out right here, and we're just going to denote that it's kind of half a parabola. Best way to understand this. So that means D of T is strictly increasing. Strictly going up. Okay. That means T can be represented in the interval and t is greater than 0. So, for example, you can say t is 10. And if you wanted to write it out long way, you can say 0. That's an acceptable boundary, because boundary and interval, you need they're kind of interchangeable concepts in this example. But that is how straight ahead C is. This is an Algebra 2 question yet again. So that one's pretty straightforward. And you may hear thunder here in southern Kentucky. It is raining pretty good here. So let's do question A. Use the given data to write 3 equations using this chart. And then we're going to find the values of A, B, and C as decimal equivalents. So at D is 0, we have 0, 0 plus C, but C is 25. So let's write that out. Pretty straightforward. So at D equals 2, we have 30, which equals the following. We have 4A plus 2B plus 25. How do I get 25? Because it's from D from 0. We know C has to be 25. Because at T0, that's what that value is. And then we're going to do D equals 4. And so 4 months, so that's 16A plus 4B plus 25. So there is part 1 of A. That's all they're asking is, what are the equations? What are the equations? There it is. There's a point or two there. Now the second part is solve them. This is another algebra. As a matter of fact, I would say this is algebra 1. There's only 2 variables. So all you have is 30, 4A plus 2B plus 25, and then 34 equals 4A, correction, 16A plus 4B plus 25. So you can already see why I'm not a big fan of this. This is an Algebra 1 question. This is just a straightforward system of equations. So let me break out the eraser here. If I get all my chalk dust off. And yes, I do clean the board semi-regularly. We've just been busy. So you have 5 equals 4A plus 2B. And then you have 9 equals 16A plus 4B. Remember, C is 25. We know this already from part 1. And what you find out when you solve this is that the solution, and it says decimal, so they will get it in decimal, is this. That's the solution. ABC. So negative an eighth, 2 3/4, 25. The question specifically says they want it in decimals. But very much an Algebra 1 question. You should be getting that question. If you're not getting that question, I have some other questions I would like to ask you. Now, part B, 3-parter. The first is average rate of change from t equals 0 to t equals 4. Express your answer as a decimal approximation. So what they want is, I finally gave up. Here we go. What they want you to demonstrate is this. Okay, this is an Algebra 1 concept because you should be going, hey, that looks like the slope formula. Because it is. It's a straight slope formula. And what you will find is you're going to have 34 minus 25 over 4, which is 9/4, and that equals 2.25. And remember, the scale is in thousands. So 2.25K. Thousands. Okay, that's an easy point. Use the average rate of change found in Part B1 to estimate the song at t 1.5 months. So we now know we started here plus 2.25 multiplied. So now it's a linear approximation, and what you'll get is 28.375 thousandths. So this is your scaling factor. This is 1.5 months minus 0. So you're starting here and you're going right about there. Pretty straightforward. They're telling you treat it as a line. In other words, it's another Algebra 1 question. Now, the final question is very complicated. It says, let A sub t represent the estimate of the total number of plays using the average rate of change found in Part B1. So remember the average rate of change. So I'm going to say average rate of change is 2.25. So average rate of change. For A 1.5 found in Part B2, so A 1.5, so we've already calculated that. Show that A 1.5 is less than the function D 1.5. So they're making the claim that A 1.5 is less than D 1.5. That's the claim. Explain why this is the case for the interval 0 is less than t less than 4. Your explanation should include a reference to the graph of D and its relationship to AT. Okay, so when you see this, the first thing you should think is secant line. Okay? Secant line is a trig concept. It's just showing up in a different way because it's pointing you to how calculus is done with derivatives. And so what you find out is the first thing I would say to prove this is we know what A 1.5 is. So we say, what is D 1.5 is, and now we go back to the previous question. So we know it's negative 1/8 times 2.25. I've just went ahead and multiplied it out. Plus, so 2 3/4. So 2 3/4 is 11/4 times 1.5, so that's 3/2, plus 25. Okay. So prove that that is greater than that. Okay. What you find out is this is negative 1/8. So 2/25 is 9/4 plus 25. And so now I have everything. I'm going to reduce this over here. 30 seconds. This is negative 9 30-seconds plus multiply by 4. So that is 132 plus 25. And so now I know that I have 123 30 seconds. Okay. 123 plus 25 equals D 1.5. I'll stop right there. Here's why. Okay. When you compare, what you find out is this value here, because if you set them to figure out which is greater, what happens is you have 123 over 32 versus 3.375. Astute students should realize that's 3/8. It's 3/8. So it's 27/8. Okay, 27/8. So obviously when you multiply this by 4, you're trying to figure out, and so multiply this by 4, and there's the proof. So we have justified that D is always greater than A of T. We just proved it in this example. Now, because you proved it, your explanation should include a reference to the graph. So what does this mean? They're asking you to interpret. And so what they're saying is this. Here's your graph, and here's our parabola. And we know that at this point right there, we're going to say this is T at 1.5. But the secant line does that. And so if you were to zoom in, you zoom in on this point right here, is that when you draw the rectangle, that's what it looks like. That's a rough drawing of what it looks like. The line is under, the secant line, the tangent line is under the curve, and that's why this claim works. So, like in question 1, I want to rate the problem. So, question 2, how would I rate it? So, the first thing I'm going to say is outside of question B part 3, which I really liked that question, everything else you should have exposure to in an Algebra 1 class. So I'm going to say this question is 80% Algebra 1. Okay. The, what is it, B part 3? I enjoyed that question. That shows how deep your understanding is. In terms of quality and strength of question, I can only give this a 3 out of 9. And that's because so much of this is remedial. You're not even solving a proper 3-variable system here, because D of 0 solves itself in question A1. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe. Stay tuned for more. As always, take care of yourself, take care of one another. God bless.